have our second Intro to Pickleball class on Saturday, December 21st from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you wouldn't mind emailing me or contacting me just so I can get your name and make sure that you have the prerequisites, I guess, appropriate attire, warm up, whatnot. But we have all supplies. So we have balls, we have paddles, we have the nets and the courts that'll be in the gym from 10 to 1. Okay? Thank you.
The pickleball is no charge. It's free. Are there any other announcements? Okay, I would like to say that there will be adult Dharma message by Reverend Dr. Kenji Akahoshi. Is that now?
Following. So we'll dismiss the students.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, all students are dismissed to their classes. Please show good etiquette. Don't enter the row until the one ahead of you is gone, but since there's so few people, I don't know if that matters anymore. Students can go to the classes. We will then now have an adult Dharma message by the Reverend Doctor here immediately following the students leaving. And then we will have a luncheon and Bodhi Day. I believe it will be the traditional hot dogs and chow mein.
In the mini chapel.
And that will be in the mini chapel, not the social hall, in the mini chapel, excuse me. And then at 1 o'clock, the Reverend Doctor will be having his talk on how we can increase membership. Growing our Sangha.
Okay, I'll get Sensei set up.
Okay.
Oh. Hopefully. Yeah, it'll be right here for you. And then let me get the.
Is there a new thing up there?
The screen is down. We can say
Bodhi Day? Yeah, okay. Okay, is it still on the main Bodhi Day?
Yeah, still on.
Okay.
December 8th.
Okay. Okay, shall we start? Okay, we're back again. And actually, the computer seems to be working for a while. But yeah, welcome. Today we are celebrating Bodhi Day. And as we know, this is the day that a prince, Siddhartha Gautama, became enlightened to become Shakyamuni Buddha. But as a prince, he realized that even as a prince with all that he had, he couldn't avoid these three things of sickness, old age, and death. I'm an expert of two of those so far. And so he decided to leave his princely life and seek out what might be the resolution to this truth. And we might think about this, because here was a prince with all these things, and if we think about it, we live a life that's probably better than his life. We can, push a lever and have air conditioning or heating. We have food from all over the world just down the block. We can even call DoorDash and have it, sent in. Entertainment, TV, communication, everything. Transportation, we can fly anywhere around the world. And so we have this life that's actually better than what Shakyamuni Buddha experienced 2,600 years ago. And yet he left that. So that must give us pause. What are we working for? And so on the day we designate as Bodhi Day, the day he became enlightened, we say that he became a Buddha because he said he was awake. A passerby asked him, "Oh, sir, are you a god?" Because he had this aura around him. And the Buddha said, "No, I'm awake." And Buddha means the awakened one. And, this was a singular event. And so at the time, if you wanted to have that life that the Buddha experienced, what would you do? You would become a monk or a nun, shave your head, leave ordinary life, live in a monastery where you didn't have any responsibilities. And the object was to really control your ego, the thing that really is directed toward greed, ignorance, hatred, that kind of thing. And so we know that our founder, Shinran, did that for 20 years as a monk. But he had the honesty and the integrity to say, I can't do this. For 20 years, he could not live by the precepts. He said he had his passions. And so he left the monastery. Fortunately, he followed, through a dream, another monk named Honen, who at the time was starting this newer kind of Pure Land Buddhism. And what Shinran did was really realize that what the Buddha achieved was something he could not. And yet he, again, reading the sutras, especially the larger sutra, realized that the Buddha had talked about another way for common people. That's most of us, ordinary people who had jobs, who needed the ego, we have responsibilities, we raise families, we have obligations toward our career and so forth. So we have our ego. And so what I've been saying is that as ordinary people, what I think Shinran is emphasizing is not enlightenment. We're not going to become Buddhas very soon, but we can be awakened. And for those of you who follow the doctrine, Shinran wrote 6 chapters in his Kyogyo Shinsho. The first four are the attributes of teaching, practice, shinjin, and attainment. The 5th chapter is, what happens if all this is accomplished, and it is, true Buddha and Pure Land. But he wrote chapter 6, which if anyone's bought those books that's on your bookshelf that you bought 20 years ago, if you look at chapter 6, it's twice as big as any other chapter. It's in 2 volumes. And that's on provisional Buddha and provisional Pure Land. And my reading of this is that what he's saying is that most of us aren't going to be that dedicated to even doing what the Buddha prescribed for us lay people. And so we're going to be in this, again, mythologically or metaphorically, in the lotus bed for 500 years. So this is why I'm stressing this point of awakening and not enlightenment. And what does it mean to wake up? Well, what I've been doing in my ministerial career is trying to talk about Shin Buddhism from a contemporary viewpoint, because I had trouble trying to decipher and explain things from a traditional point of view. There's this difference of time and culture. There's a difference of 2,500 years or so. When the earth was flat, everything was attributed to gods and deities. And then culture, Japanese culture, and here we are in American culture. For some of you, what does this mean? Come here, oide? Yeah, so some of you, this is oide. And for younger Americans, may say, this is bye-bye, goodbye. So the difference in culture is that we use the same thing, saying, come here, but other people are taking this as bye-bye. And so knowing this, these things we have, using and I'm jumping to a contemporary interpretation, which often doesn't use traditional words, and they're more familiar words. But anyway, this is where I'm coming from. So this is what I'm saying. Rather than thinking about being enlightened like the Buddha, we might consider ourselves achieving something. And achieving is not really the point. And the Buddha, I felt, when he became enlightened, realized that he was aligning himself with truth. And that the truth is this ego self really distorts things. And so he had a way, and he was a singular individual. I don't know if we can, if there are other names that have come through history with the teachings that he has. And so for us ordinary people, I think we're looking at something else, something a little less than being enlightened, and maybe being awake. Being awake is something we're familiar with. I wake up every morning, fall asleep, and take a nap during the day sometime. But we're used to waking up and falling asleep. So this is not a permanent thing. We just wake up and realize something, and we're in this pure realm, and then we, get back to our normal, ignorant selves. But it's a repeatable thing. And so I've put this as kind of a process that we might think about as Shin Buddhism. If Buddhism long ago traditionally might mean it's a process of becoming a Buddha, I think for Shin Buddhists, it's a process of awakening by aligning our mind with truth. There's a little problem with that. Truth is a big word, and I won't get into that too much today. But we'll get into just some simple things. And so just think about that. Just what are we doing? I talked about Nembutsu, and I'll speak about that again. But it's aligning our minds with what is true. And I got my slides. Okay. And what I'm looking at is that what we are aware of is that we receive these things from the efforts of others. And often I'll use this term, efforts of others, rather than other power. But that what we're doing is realizing that our lives have been really dictated by what others have done for us. And I get this from, again, Shindan in his Kyogyo Shinsho. He says this, speaking about our ego. We're not about eliminating our ego. He says, still the clouds and mists of greed and desire, anger and hatred, cover as always the sky of true and real Shinjin. But though the light of the sun is veiled by clouds and mist, beneath the clouds and mist, there's darkness, not light. So I take this to mean, yeah, we have our ego, we have these wants and desires, and yet there's light beneath. So he's saying that, gee, there's, we ought to look at this. And how do we look at this? And he says this, when one realizes Shinjin, an awakening, let's say, and attaining great joy, one immediately leaps crosswise, closing off the 5 evil courses. So again, to give you an example, a physical example, hide my face. Put out your hand, and with the palm of your hand, hide my face. Okay? Now, if I were to leap crosswise, not too far, you can see me again. So I take this to mean it's just a change of perspective. Nothing's changed except the crosswise leap. And so how do we get from desire to appreciation? Just by changing our perspective. And perspective is one of the Eightfold Path. We often use that as a first. And so as ordinary people, this aligning our minds with truth is to realign our minds to, what may be giving us dissatisfaction and discontent, and something that pleases us. Not that we determine this beforehand, but afterwards, that something happens and then we shift our minds. I use the example of my grandmother who was in Wana Grove, the Katos. And anyway, she was a devout Shin Buddhist. And my cousin told me, who lived with her, that once she broke a dish. And my grandmother said, oh, that's good for the potter. How many of us would think about that, breaking a dish? Again, she shifted her mind because she lived a life of this appreciation of thinking of the others. So breaking a dish was shifting her mind to think about the other person. The potter could sell another dish. So again, it's just changing our perspective. And I think as Shin Buddhists, what we're doing is shifting from the attitude of achieving something to receiving. And that's something that we might think about, just that we have been receiving so much. And, how do we keep this in mind? Again, Shinan says, one is naturally brought to enter a stage of the definitely settled, solely saying the Tathagata or Buddha's name constantly. One should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. And this is why we're saying Namo Amida Butsu. It's the name of the Buddha with a response of gratitude. And so this is, this is our primary practice, saying Nembutsu. And earlier with the children's talk, I talked about the different times that we might apply this. But essentially, gratitude is one of the basic experiences. And if you look at the BCA logo, it says BCA, and then it says a life of gratitude. How might we learn to live a life of gratitude? By practicing gratitude. And how might we do that? Just by realizing what we are receiving, saying thank you. And what I think we're doing as Shin Buddhists is not trying to eliminate the ego, but think about balance. Because as the Buddha lived the life of a prince, he left that. He actually joined 6 ascetics and deprived his body. At the time, the spiritual people at that time were negating the body, and he did that for 6 years, almost died, realized that wasn't the path. And so he talked about the middle path. So for us ordinary people, I think it's just this thought of balancing. We have a lot of greed and desire, so we might balance that with this appreciation. Now, we'll do a little exercise to see if this is true for us, that where are our minds aligned with. So we won't get into a real meditation, but I'll give you a story about, how I felt. And Reverend Shibata mentioned that I was a dentist, and I was very proud because I was able to go to UCSF, which I felt was one of the best schools in dentistry. And I thought I did it all myself because I did, try hard in high school, and in college I forego a lot of, fun activities so that I could get good enough grades to get into school. So I was very proud that I achieved that, degree. But later on, I began to realize that I didn't just achieve it myself. I didn't know this. I thought about this later, but my mother had shifted from a part-time job at Nichibe in San Jose, Japanese store, to a children's clothing store full-time. And I know my dad worked 7 days a week as a clerk right after the war in the green grocery. He had his own before the war, lost everything, came back and was a clerk at someone else's. But he worked 7 days a week. And then I had teachers and coaches and, instructors who really helped me. So I was receiving all this. And the school I went to, how did it get there? I assume it's there, but somebody started it. And somebody started the university. And we're in a civil society, well, we have been, where in many countries they don't have that opportunity. All these things were received. And so I want to ask you, if you can think about what you think your greatest achievement might have been, either in your career, family life, committee, social life, what is, what thing proud about what we might think of and so just for a couple of minutes, we'll be quiet, think about that. Now, you might close your eyes or, get into a meditation posture, just thinking of that position. So just think of something right now. I'll give you about 10 seconds. Now, think of how you got there. Like my own thoughts later. How did you not only achieve, but what did you receive from others? Parents, teachers, coaches, institutions, financially, scholarships perhaps, as a family person, were there other family members who helped? Were there things were social, other committee people? And think about whether you attained that position through achievement, which you did, but also how much more did we receive? So I'll just be quiet for another 20, 30 seconds, and think of all the direct and especially indirect things that occurred for you to attain that position that you felt very proud of. Okay, I think we're starting to realize that we can shift our minds. That normally we might have thought, yeah, I did this, and I got this award, or people recognized me. And you see that at the Academy Awards a lot, Thank you for the Best Actor Award, but there's this whole group in back of me, and that's true. And that's true for all of us. And so one way to do this is to really have a practice of shifting. And it would be a shift from please, the desire for what I want, to thank you, to realize what I have already received and continue to receive. This is something that we can do. And the word practice is misunderstood, I think, in Shin Buddhism. We say we don't practice. And I'd like to clarify that I don't think we practice to achieve anything, but we do need a practice to realize what we have received. Everything we've done in life has taken a practice from, even walking, talking, you learn words and sentences and conversations, as children, and then you learn how to write, and you can write a report and conversation and so forth. Driving a car, remember that first time in the parking lot where your one parent is trying to help you drive? All these things, cooking, it started out very poorly, concentrated, but at some point it became very natural. And so we need to practice to realize what we have received. And this is what I think Shin Buddhism is about, practicing to acknowledge what we are receiving. And it is that there's so many more things to say thank you. And let's see. One of our practices is to say itadakimasu at meals, to realize all that's gone into that meal, the sacrifice of animals, vegetables, people who grew things, brought them to market, prepared them. If it's at a restaurant, the cooks, the servers. If it's at home, your wife or whoever does all the cooking. There's so much that goes into a meal. So we say itadakimasu. We really honor that. So again, that's a practice. But we can extend this beyond that to so many different levels. And basically, the most important thing is how we got here. This is where thank you progresses and transform into something spiritual. How did we get here? And I like to use the imagery of the ocean representing truth or the universe. And, Reverend Dr. Tanaka uses ocean. He has a book titled that. And so you think about the ocean. And for us to understand truth, the truth of the ocean, we might go down in the submarine. And a lot of people are looking out the front porthole, seeing the fishes and saying, oh, yeah, I understand truth because I have this little view. Shin Buddhists also have a little view, a porthole, but we use a porthole in the back. And what do we see? We see our ancestors. And it may only be a sliver of truth, but this is how we got here. And Mitsuo Aida says this in a poem of how we got here. He says, my father and mother altogether 2. Parents of my father and mother altogether 4. Parents of parents altogether 8. If I count in this way back to 10 generations, altogether 1,024. What about back 20 generations? To my surprise, over 1 million people. From infinite past, a life baton has passed on. Now, here, I live with my life baton. This is my life. This is your life. And so 1 million ancestors with perfect parenting made each one of us. These are impossible odds to be born a human being. There are other statistics I could give that takes apparently 100 million male cells to impregnate 1 female cell to make each one of us. Those are impossible odds, greater than the lotto. So each one of us beat out 100 million other sperm, other cells to be each one of us. And what I like to say is, being a biology student, what happened to that second sperm that hits the egg? If there isn't another egg to have a twin, it failed. It never has the ability to experience what we do. All the troubles we have, all the pleasant and wonderful things we experience in human life. So each of us has a failed twin. And so this is, when we monkuing and complaining about this and that, just realize that second twin never had that experience. So this is where thank you goes into Namo Amida Butsu, the appreciation, gratitude of the gift of life itself. So what do we do when we wake up to this, when we become aware? Again, in services, Ondok-san says, we owe our teachers. This is the debt of gratitude I owe my Dharma teachers. I will express my bodily form is finally shattered. So we serve others. I left the other part, which I guess I don't have a slide, but the one thing we do at every service, and we did that 3 treasures, and I have a kind of a altered version of 3 treasures. Rare, difficult, and wondrous is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Rare, difficult, and wondrous is the teachings of the Buddha. Now we hear it. These are things that have already happened. We have received human life. We have received the Dharma, the truth, a guide to life. What do? We wake up to that. And what do we do when we wake up? We realize we've received this, and we serve others. And we're serving others not for merit or for recognition, except to see whether our name is in the newsletter for our donations. We serve others because we realize we have already gained the benefit of the service of others. And so in turn, in interdependence, we serve others. So what is it we see at, temples like this? Dharma school? Yeah. YVA? Another Buddhist from another sect asked, why do you have sports for kids? We're serving each other. We don't just sit and meditate, and we're active in ordinary life. And we have classes, pickleball, be careful about sprained ankles. But all these things are ordinary life, and yet we bring a spiritual attitude toward it, that these things are special. And this is why we can say Naman Dabs at any time. We realize, all these things have been provided for us. And so this term, Naman Dabs, is just a recognition and a deep appreciation that we can enjoy this. So again, Bodhi Day is the day that the Buddha gained enlightenment. I think that it makes us aware that we as ordinary people can realize that we've achieved an awakening because of others. And so what we do is serve others and help others awaken themselves. This is the vow, the primal vow that the Bodhisattva is saying all beings are awakened. And the Dharma helps us do that. And it's the middle path, the balance, that we're not good all the time, we're not awake all the time, concerned with others all the time. Most of the time it's about me, me, me. But it is a time when we can think about, that the me in reality is actually the we. We are part of a group. And this is our reality. And so with that, we find ourselves thinking of others, and if you think about Japanese culture, it's all about the others. We say, how are you? Okage-sama, because of you, I am fine. So again, I'll leave you with this thought that Nembutsu can be thought of as thank you, a shift from please to thank you. It's a life of balance, and our service to others really helps us feel the joy in life that we are included. I want to end with this story that may highlight this. There's this farmer, a little farmer in Japan that had a farm, and he lived on one side of this great valley. And every morning when he woke up, he'd see across this long valley a beautiful house that had golden walls, because as the sun rose behind him in the morning, he could see the sun shining on these walls, and it reflected back as gold. And so he thought, that guy is so rich that maybe I'm having, a hard time making a living with my little farm. He probably would be able to give me some gold and, help me out. So he told his wife, and she agreed that, yeah, why don't you try to see if he might help us. And so she packed a lunch and a gourd with some tea. And so one morning early he started out. Halfway there, he stopped, ate his rice balls, his onigiri, with umeboshi and tea, and continued. And it wasn't until nightfall you see that the far distant hill is far away. And he was nearing the other side of the valley where he saw this house with the golden walls. And he was getting very excited as, dusk was coming on, and he was rounding the corner, climbing this small part of the hill. And as he rounded the last little hill, and he, was very excited knowing that he'd see this gorgeous house, he rounded the corner, and then his heart stopped and his jaw dropped, because he didn't see a beautiful golden wall and a beautiful house. What he saw was an old abandoned shack. And what he had been seeing is the morning sun reflecting off this window. And what he had seen is the reflection of the sun being gold. And he was so dejected because he had made this long trek. He had these hopes that someone would give him some gold and make his life here. And all he could do is, sit down and turn around and look back at his own house because he had made this long trek. And yet, this was when the sun was setting behind him, and he looked back at his house. And suddenly, he saw where his house was, that there was this golden reflection. And again, it was the sun reflecting off the window of his house. And he realized it was just a shift of his mind, that he realized what he had, a nice wife, children. It was hard work, but he had this life. And all he could do was put his hand together in gratitude. So please join me in expressing our deepest sense of appreciation and gratitude with the Nembutsu. Gassho, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda.
Thank you, Dr. Sen, for that adult talk. And all of us can look at ourselves and say, we have a lot of work to do. We'll be having hot dogs and chow mein over in the mini chapel. Everybody is invited. Please go over because there's usually a lot of hot dogs left. Reverend says there might not be, so you better run over there quickly and get your hot dog.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll get this later. No, I don't have a college. So, I just